Good morning, Big Square, road2roo.com with your morning horn of tea, your horn of decaffeinated tea. Day 2 of the cleanse, going great. I had my caffeine withdrawals last night, headaches all night, because I started detoxing on caffeine 2-3 days ago. Usually takes 2 or 3 days before I can get these caffeine withdrawal headaches. Just part of the detox system. If you guys are doing this and you're experiencing headaches because it's because you haven't had caffeine. It usually, for you guys that just went off caffeine, it'll be a couple days. And it sucks, but it goes away and then you feel massively better. And it shows you just how addicted you were to that morning horn of Z's, that cup of coffee or caffeinated tea or whatever you were doing with caffeine, sodas. Just shows you how detoxing isn't easy, but you feel so much better afterwards. So I am probably going to change the name of my morning show. But let's just talk repo. Zero hedge, repo panic returns as Fed injects $99 billion in liquidity, including first oversubscribed term repo in 3 weeks. Dun, dun, dun. Who told you? Not first, but who told you it wasn't going to end? This is not as dramatic as it looks, mainly because there was an expiration of a term repo that they said they only needed to the end of the year. Well, the end of the year is over. So why are they having to flip the term repos and oversubscribe it? It's a systemic problem. The banks aren't going back into the repo market to be the lender. Why? Because they're scared of the banks that'll go down, mainly European banks. Who would lend overnight if you make almost no money overnight lending? But what would you do if you're JP Morgan and you could put money towards a credit card that pays you 20% interest, or money towards a less than 1% or 1.5% return, I think right now, on overnight money that has risk attached to it, and that risk is probably really high. Nobody knows how big that risk is because the counterparties in the repo market are unknown. Deutsche Bank, the biggest example. How long have I been screaming about it? So yeah, the banks don't want to go into the repo market and lend. And all the hedge funds and banks that play in that world, money market funds that need overnight cash, are saying, oh my God, what have I gotten myself into? Oh my God. It's all part of the same game. It's all part of the derivative complex, intertwined. It affects everything. It touches everything. The littlest thing can set off this derivative bomb. Here's what Zero Hedge said, and just like that, the repo market is on the fritz once again. More than 2 weeks after the last oversubscribed term repo operation on December 16th, moments ago, the Fed announced that dealers are once again scrambling for liquidity, submitting $41 billion in securities into today's 2-week repo operation, which was oversubscribed, hitting the maximum operation limit of $35 billion. Today's oversubscription was ominous because while the liquidity shortage into year-end was expected and justified, the barrage of term repos ahead of the turn, the liquidity shortage was supposed to normalize after the year-end. Alas, that appears not to have happened, and today's submission was the highest since December 16th. One reason for today's repo spike is that, as we noted last Friday, this is the first week that sees substantial term repo maturities and liquidity damage. As follows: $25 billion leaves the market on Monday, $28.8 billion on Tuesday, and then $18 billion next Friday. But wait, there's more. Today's oversubscribed repo, coupled with yesterday's overnight repo surge, and this morning's 63.9 overnight repo, jumping right back up there, means the Fed just injected a total of $99 billion to keep the levitation party going, and confirms that the repo market remains paralyzed. Worse, any attempts to drain liquidity from the repo market or generally slow down the shrinkage of the balance sheet will be met with failure. It is also another indication that the repo market now holds the Fed hostage, with Powell now tapping in, not only injecting liquidity via QE4 i.e. the monetization of T-bills, but continued reliance on repos in the $250 billion range. Of course, should the Fed threaten to even pull a bit of liquidity, then the market is comfortable sacrificing, and stocks get it. The flip side too, as long as the Fed keeps growing the balance sheet at a rate of $100 billion per month, the market melt-up will continue. The Fed is trapped, mainly because these big banks aren't willing to go back into the repo market because they know there's going to be some monster bank failures. Remember, all this happened. Everybody says September 17th. No, it was September 11th that it happened. September 17th is when it showed up in the repo rate jumping to 10%. Who called September 11th? What was it, 6 months ago that I put that warning out? September 11th for the private row members? This is the exact same thing that was going on in 2008, which was an attempt to take down the criminal banksters. What happened? On September 11th, 2008, they did it all at once. They pulled $500 billion out of the money market funds. Hank Paulson had to go to Congress and say, give us $700 billion, and then they leveraged it up to $28 trillion over a couple of years. That's what happened. That was an attack by the good guys, and it was foretold in the Road to Ruta comic books and what Ruta wrote in the sand, 11 plus 9. This latest one on September 11th, 2019, same thing was done except a little different. The derivative bubble was allowed to grow higher. The bond bubble blew up. Everything we're in bubble, everything. And then the good guys hit on September 11, 2019. Except the hit, it's not a one-time thing. It's going to grow and grow and grow and get worse and worse and worse. They have a lot of tools in their arsenal to destroy the old system, get rid of all the debt and all the derivatives. Those of you thinking there's going to be derivatives in the future, good luck with that. Any derivatives will be banned for probably over a decade. And then we'll inch back in saying, okay, derivatives are all right as long as you hold the underlying asset and you have to prove it via the blockchain. No more speculation, no more market rigging. That is our future. It's coming. So here is the latest outright bill purchase. Now these are different. All right, I'm going to show you something. So this just posted. You can see it's 11 o'clock. It's just like 11:01 right now when I'm recording this Eastern time. This just posted, and the amount is $7.5 billion. I posted on the private road right here on the repo charts I track for private road members and for Patreon members. Look what I posted. 7.5 is already here. How did I know it's 7.5? A lucky guess. No. They've been switching off and on from a little one to a big one to a little one to a big one. These are POMOs. These are the permanent repos. And they're up in the 200 billion range. But yeah, so that's what's going on. It came true. So 7.5 was added to my total. Now I keep the total and I subtract out the term repos. So that's the real amount needed tonight. Right here. This is the real amount needed tonight. It's 452 billion. And you can see from the last 2 days, although 99 billion was added right here with the 63 billion or 63.9 billion on the overnight and the 35 billion on the term repo, which expires on 1/21, which will have to be rolled over again. They did have there was a subtraction of 28.8 billion back from today's the 7th right here. On 12/23, they put a term repo in of 28.8. So you have to pull that out. That's what people don't get. This isn't a $1 trillion bailout. Now, I don't know what's going on behind the scenes. Just for what they tell us about the repo situation and the POMO situation, it's not people are getting it wrong. You can't say, oh, yesterday is 63, the day before is 80, the day before is 55, and add them all up. Because they all expire and get paid back. Now, what we care about is what is needed for each night. What is needed for each night is what the permanent operations plus the overnight operations plus the term repos that are active. I hope that makes sense to everybody. So right now we're at $452 billion. Now, it didn't change much from yesterday. Yesterday was 455 because we had this 28.8. But the key is that it should be clear to everybody that nobody's coming in to take the Fed's place. Nobody on the banking side. Now, this This market is supposed to be supplied by the bankers themselves, not the Fed. Everybody's supposed to be in there participating in this. I think it's a $1.5 trillion market. And it's the banks lending on the overnight to hedge funds and mostly things like that, and other banks. JP Morgan, for example. Deutsche Bank, for example. But the banks aren't adding to their position in repo. As a matter of fact, they're trying to pull out. That's why this has to get bigger and bigger. It'll probably hit 1.5 trillion, the full amount of the repo market. But that's the other thing, is the POMOs don't really help all that much either on the repo side, because they're not repos. These are permanent purchases. These are more like, that is the QE. The POMOs are the QE. The treasury purchases are the QE. Not just treasury. That's what the QE is. It's about 200 billion. It's the 388. That's going to rise to 1.5 trillion, and all banks will go away, and the Fed will be the only supplier of repo cash. Do I think it'll get there? No, it won't be. It won't go that far. As soon as we hit 800 billion in total, I think people are going to raise the flag and say, what the hell is going on? Or, if you believe the Road to Ruta research over the past 20 years, silver will run so high that it destroys the banksters. How high does silver have to run? Probably $10. $10 is a $10 billion hit by the bankers of Tier 1 capital. Imagine now it's only 4 or 5 criminal banks controlling the silver market. Imagine you're a commodity trader at JP Morgan or Citibank or Deutsche Bank or HSBC. And you have to go to your boss and say, silver just rose $10. We lost our share of it was $4 billion. We had a $4 billion loss in the last couple of days. Well, your boss will shut you down, fire you, RICO charges, all that bullshit. That's all it takes, because the concentration of the short is, top 7 own, I think 90-something percent, 98%. The top 7 banks of the silver short. It's huge. That's why the silver short has killed so many banks and so many players. Bear Stearns, AIG, although AIG was bailed out for $350 billion because it was so systemic to the system. Drexel Burnham, he just keeps going back. Who has the silver short right now? I think JP Morgan's out of it, but they're dying because they had to get out of it. They're not out of it totally, mind you. They did add to their silver short position according to Ted Butler. But they have 1 billion ounces of physical silver in the back. That's how they justify what they're doing, and it's how they're going to profit off the rise of silver. Then again, they're up on RICO charges, so they'll lose 3-1. They will lose 3 billion ounces of silver when this thing comes down. Yes, half their trading floor is under RICO charges. Actually, I think only 4 under RICO charges, and the other 4 are turning state's evidence against Jamie Dimon, Blythe Masters, and JP Morgan in general. That's the kicker. That's why the Department of Justice can't say JP Morgan. They call it Bank A. We all know who these traders work for. They just can't say it out loud because they don't want to be the one responsible for the system collapsing. The bankers, the banksters have to be the ones responsible. Martin Armstrong came out with a great one on how will Europe respond to being the source of the crisis. Martin Armstrong thinks it's all going to start in Europe. Who else said that? Lindsey Williams. It's all going to start in Europe and quickly, within weeks, spread to the U.S. Dear Martin, you have discussed the structural design flaw of the euro being due to a lack of consolidation of EU country debts, as well as EU policies that prohibit bank bailouts. That's the key. They can't bail out banks. And they never will be able to. You know why? Because they didn't bail out Cyprus. They didn't bail out Greece. They didn't bail out any of the southern banks. What they do, they stole their money. They took 10% haircuts on deposits and things like that. Criminal activity for their own con. I'm surprised Europe isn't already up in arms, but they will be very soon. And they bought assets owned by the state. owned by the governments of, which is I think is stupid because all the people have to do is get pissed off enough and take them back, and that's very simple to do when the chaos hits. Everybody who invested in a different country, good luck seeing the fruits of that investment as the monetary system collapses. That's why I'm so adamant that gold and silver mining companies, investors in shares, you're going to lose all the foreign assets. They're all going to be nationalized. Imagine if you're sitting there in Mexico, you've been raped for hundreds of years of your silver. The system falls apart. Billions silver goes to $1,000, $2,000 an ounce. Mexico has the largest deposits of silver. What do? Do you give these foreign shareholders all your country's wealth and have your people poor? No, you nationalize it. Say, hey, the system was rigged. It all fell apart. Now get the hell out of my country. Yes, Mexico will build the wall and will pay for it. Why? To keep Americans out of Mexico. That's obvious. That's what Trump was talking about the whole time. Anyway, he goes on to say, if I understand correctly, wasn't it also the case that the ECB was not legally allowed to buy EU country sovereignty debt? The law either changed or was ignored during the European debt crisis earlier this decade to allow for the ECB to buy sovereign bonds, which they bought, correct? Answer, everything would function so much better if we had rational leadership. The problem is simply that government will never avert a crisis. They must first experience the crisis before they will ever consider changing the policy. Yes, it seems easy to fix the problem now. However, I can talk face to face until my face turns blue. They will never prevent a crisis. Politicians know that they only look authoritative when they respond to a crisis. Nobody will listen if they say that they just prevented a crisis. People assume it's just BS. Add to this reality the problem between domestic and international policy objectives. Politicians run for election, promising to do this or that, which all seems nice for it is presented to be in their power. That is what is under siege. The Federal Reserve has suddenly realized that it has become the central bank of the world. They were intending to lower rates to help emerging markets, Europe, and Japan. Then the repo crisis hit and the Fed was compelled to address the liquidity crisis. This was not about stimulating the economy. It was about preventing short-term rates from rising. In other words, the QE of 2008 to 2009 was about buying long-term debt to try to lower long-term interest rates. There's a short-term. Here, the short-term rates are rising. Traditionally, the only thing a central bank can control is the short term. The repo crisis exposed the fact that central banks are losing control of even the short term. Remember the inverted yield curve in the summer of 2019 that everyone said was a precursor to a recession? Ever since the repo crisis, the yield curve has steepened dramatically. This is confirming what I've been saying. This was never about stimulation. It was an attempt to prevent short-term rates from rising. Therefore, the question becomes, 1. Will Europe respond and realize that their no bailout policy will create a worldwide banking contagion and crisis? 2. If they do recognize that they are the source of a worldwide crisis, how long will it take them to respond and reverse their policy? And 3, will they accept responsibility or blame the rest of the world? Rational people respond completely differently than politicians who cannot publicly admit that they were wrong. Good job, Martin. That guy's brilliant. He's brilliant. And yes, he gets most of, I think he gets most of what's going on in the repo markets. Although I think there's a bigger thing going on behind the scenes. Now, repo markets are what they tell the public. Behind the scenes, they're creating trillions of dollars. Look, talk to Catherine Austin Fitz about what she's found in public documents. It's 21 trillion or 30 trillion, I think now. It's actually infinity. This is all just a show. It's a game. But that makes you think, okay, who wrote this script? And why are they doing this repo stuff now? Is it the end game that they are trying to foster? I believe it is. Both sides want the system to crash. The bad guys want the system to crash to get away with their crimes of the last zillion years. The good guys want the system to crash to get rid of the bad guys. It's all unsustainable. Humanity is the ones that's suffering through debt right now. Massive amounts of debt created and fostered by the banking system that we live in. All sourced back to the gold in the Grand Canyon, the reason the Federal Reserve was created. Humanity is afraid to deal with their problems, so they kick the can. So that's what I got right now. I got a good post coming up about gold and silver later today. But it is official, I will be at the January 29th Salt Lake City, Utah Bitcoin Bin meetup at Piper Down Pub, 1492 State Street. Check out this pub. How fun is that? They even have a stage. And look, they even have speakers. Stage. That's what the pub looks like. Now, this is a couple days after the cleanse, so I can drink beer, I can have a Guinness, and we will be talking about cryptos, talking about freedom. Ben will be recruiting people to work for his crypto company, his new crypto company, and I'll be bringing the music, and we're going to be singing songs, probably American Pie over and over again, because it is a pub. I used to sing in pubs, and everybody wanted to hear American Pie. And yes, I do know all the words, kind of. I screw them up here and there. It's been a long time. Come check it out. It's going to be a blast. It is on a Wednesday, so which is kind of a difficult day. I don't know what the deal with that, but it is on a Wednesday at the Piper Down Pub, Bitcoin Bin Meetup, January 29th, starting at 2 p.m. I think we go from like 2 to 7, and then they have a trivia contest, which should be fun too. So plan on being in Salt Lake City, Utah, if you can make it on a Wednesday. On a Wednesday. I guess everybody in Salt Lake City can take the afternoon off. Anyway, come check it out. Also, if you're interested in the Road to Ruta, check out the Raw Food Reboot. It's not too late to start. We're on day 2. You just have to add a day. If you want to join the Raw Food Reboot, go to roadtoruta.com. Second one down is the Raw Food Reboot. Click on Amy's website right there, and voila. Subscribe to her blog. Absolutely. The blogs are awesome. Check them out. I think it's almost every day she's putting one out. We're off day 1. She's doing a great job. Anyway, this is Big Weir. I'll talk to you guys later.